Now, what happens is that decision making in terms of budgeting, in legally, it seems like it's done in Parliament, but practically, and fairly so, budgets are made by the government of the day. And it's because they are the ones who go around promising whatever they need to accomplish. So what I see lacking, especially in this current situation, is that we have a 4.2 trillion budget. There are several things in that question that I want to highlight. One, I would have thought that the way we were trying to bring down the fiscal deficit will continue, so that we continue to borrow less and also to pay more, so that we get out of the debt situation or the debt abyss faster. Unfortunately, I see that continuity is not there, because the fiscal deficit now will end up borrowing more money than we have ever borrowed as a country in any fiscal year. That's one. Secondly, we were making attempts to make sure that critical areas are funded. Because you realize, Lina, by the way, in budget making process, critical areas that touch on the people, they do not consume as much money. So it's always easy to afford. Take, for example, a budget of 4.2 trillion. The continuity that I don't see is that I would have wished that education sector is well endowed in terms of allocations. But you realize the monies for capitation, by the time the budget came, was not enough. There was zero allocation for examinations. But even to make it worse, we went ahead and the budget was rearranged to defer the capitation further, to fund examinations up to halfway. So as we talk with you now, Treasury had already brought a budget with zero examinations budget. After we made interventions, just a little bit was availed, but again from a vote that was not sufficiently funded in the first place. So if you look at that, then there is no continuity in many years, because many years, those are some of the critical votes that had been funded. Now, to make the matter worse, even the people who invigilated and took part in the last year's exams, they still haven't been paid. So you're wondering, the money availed is for payment of arrears or for examinations that will be coming later in the year?
And this is a question that we're supposed to answer. The loopholes that we're seeing. Having invigilators who've not been paid. Sorry for cutting you short. We're having invigilators who've not been paid since last year. Who's supposed to cater for this?
The person who is the buck stops with the National Treasury. We may come here and blame the Ministry of Education, but the fact is that they can't pay money they don't have. The money ought to have been availed by the National Treasury. So that's where the buck stops. But if I can continue with the same question, the other continuity that was not there, we had hoped in the many years to come, we'll continue to incentivize agriculture. And incentivizing agriculture, you do it through inputs. Agriculture helps you solve the problem of the cost of living and sufficiency of food. But if you look at this budget, the money is available for fertilizer subsidy is the lowest that has ever been there. So that also shows a policy gap, because what is being spoken out there is not the one that is being budgeted for. The other thing, when you go to the finance bill side, agriculture was to be boosted through interventions both in the budget and also policy. But when you find that inputs in agriculture are being moved from zero rated to exempt, that's basically pushing a 16% cost to the consumer, who is the farmer, and the farmer will again push it to the consumer of the agricultural produce, who are the people of Kenya.
The debt drop.
We are in debt distress. Yeah. By being prudent. And one way of being prudent is to walk the talk. Walking the talk is simple. One, there should be sincerity in wanting growth in our economy. Growth in an economy happens if you incentivize private enterprise to thrive. Now we have an economy where is either public sector or patronage. We need to let private enterprise thrive, because there is no government that does any business a favor by giving them a conducive environment. It is the business that does an economy a favor by establishing their base in our economy. Because, Elena, we operate in a situation where we are part of the many. In the globe, we are part of the many. So when, let's say, IPS or TPS, which are part of the companies of sister companies of Nation Media Group, if they don't find a favorable condition in Kenya, they have limitless options. So we need to consciously, deliberately give private enterprise a situation where they can thrive, devoid of patronage and clientelism. That's one. Secondly, we need to look at our expenditure. Expenditure, what do I mean? We are very good in starting projects, but I want you to do your own audit. Out of the many that start, up to what level are they? I kept telling my team in Kiharu, because even as we are decision makers when it comes to our own localities, a classroom becomes a classroom when it is habitable. If you build a classroom and it's not roofed, what is there is a construction site. The utility of that classroom will only come if it's habitable. Now, the utility of a tarmac road is when tarmac is applied. It's not when excavation is done. The utility of a stadium is when the stadium is complete. So if that is the case, then why do we want to have so many construction sites and so little utility? Because if you have 10 roads ongoing, why can't you have one? It is complete. People get utility out of it, then you go to the next. Other than excavate all the 10, they become impassable, so you have made them even worse. So if you extrapolate that to every other project, then you see that's one of the things that we need to do in terms of prudence. And lastly, we need to seal loopholes. Loopholes. So that every money that gets spent actually gets spent on issues, projects, programs that benefit the people who pay taxes and who are the people of Kenya in generality. Especially, it would be wrong for me to mark my exam. So I'm talking about this current one. This current one, as I have enumerated, areas that touch on the people. One is healthcare. Two is education. Three is mobility, and especially that what can be availed by government through construction of roads. Four is the cost of living, that after all is said and done, boils down to how much is food costing. So if you look at all those issues, Elena, you realize that when it comes to the plate, this budget is not sufficiently addressing that policy issue. Because when you increase the cost of production in agricultural sector, you are basically cutting your, you are basically sabotaging your own policy. You are shooting yourself in the foot, sabotaging your own policy. Because if truly you want the cost of sugar to go down, then you have to target maize. Maize is targeted through fertilizer, and maize is targeted through other inputs, which on the policy side, they should be as less costly as possible, so that the farmer is able to produce with minimal cost, so that they can push in or push out or push forth or forward that benefit to the mirror. Then the mirror, of course, hands over that advantage to the consumer of ugali. But if you now come and start overburdening at the initial state, that the initial condition is already burdensome, then that means the entire chain will be burdensome and the plate will be more expensive. If you look at the road sector, there has been ongoing roads. Just check whether they are sufficiently funded. From where I sit, now I'm sitting, they are not. And I had thought we are going to finish that biashara as we continue going forward. We have sung the song of pending bills. It has now become a chorus. There is no money allocated for pending bills. So those are some of the issues that I see, as you correctly put it. The people of Kenya, in all their shades and scope, ought to have been more sufficiently incorporated in the budgeting. Kenya has an economic problem. It's not a revenue problem, nor an expenditure problem. It is a general economic problem. And this is it. You know, many times I see leaders celebrating that Kenya grew by 4.7% last year. It's against what backdrop? Regionally, we were the laggards. Rwanda grew by 7% in the same period. Uganda grew by a higher percentage in the same period. Tanzania grew faster than Kenya in the same period. Those are our peers around the region. So Kenya actually, in real terms, didn't grow. Because if you discount that we were already having an inflation which was higher than our growth percentage, then it shows you there is a problem. Lina, what happens is, if you need to collect more, you can only collect more in the right circumstances. The right circumstances is the economic circumstances. If you just go to the Kenyan National Bureau of Statistics, because I want to use the same government figures, you will see contradictions there. Because in there, you'll see areas that we talk about growth with our word of mouth. When it comes to figures, those areas are not growing. Take, for example, construction sector. Construction sector has filled our airwaves because of the housing project. The same government data, if you go to Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, it shows that last year, construction sector in Kenya shrank. You see, even housing. Can you imagine, Rina, that last year, consumption of cement in Kenya went low. And then, our TVs and our airwaves are filled by government with this construction bonanza. The same government reports that construction shrank. Those are some of the policy issues that I feel are the ones that then, when you look at them globally, and many of such, not specifically this one, affect revenue, affect expenditure. So to make that point even closer home, the same data from government shows that last year had the lowest money circulation growth in 20 years. That the velocity of money in Kenya grew by the smallest margin in 20 years' time. Government benefits in transactions. Government is never in the business of asset and wealth. Government is always in the business of transactions. Government only gets revenue when you transact. When you don't, there is no revenue. So when the same government data shows that there was no money growth in Kenya in terms of circulation, basically there will be no revenue. Now what do we do then to cure that? The same people we know are contributing, we squeeze them further. And when you squeeze further a taxpayer, they reach what we call the Laffer's curve. Now, the more you increase tax rate, it continues to increase up to a certain point. Up to that point, the more rate you increase, the less revenue is collected. Because as a shareholder you are put in the corner, you become creative. Or you distort your economic decisions. You are to buy a car, you say, no, at this rate, let me not buy. So whatever little the government was to get, they don't answer it this way, Elena, so that I save you from the trouble. And I'm saying it in good faith. I mean, me and you live in Kenya. Once you start the political mud, once you get into that, then you have to continue doing it. And from where I sit, there are very many critical issues. which I can actually tell you two of them, which they need to be raised, devoid of politics, because they are very helpful to what we are as a country. But to wrap it all together, that one, in the year 2024, last year, we had a reset in our country. And any leader who never learned from that reset is bound to repeat the same mistake that the leadership was doing. The reset came in June of last year. In fact, if you check around, that's the time I decelerated, even in terms of many engagements that used to be there. Because the voice was very clear from Kenyans that you work, whichever position that you are elected. This is what I interpreted. You work, don't give us too many stories, we'll see the work. As a leader, that's the message I got loud and clear from the protests of last year. And I would be a bad student if I don't implement the lessons I learned. I want to repeat again. The lesson I learned from Kenyans is this. You are an MP, you are a leader, you are a governor, you are a leader, and all the other top leadership. The voice I heard from Kenyans is, you work in terms of the work that we gave you. Leave the rest of the judgment to us. We'll be able to see whatever you are doing, whether it merits anything else. And that is the biggest lesson I learned. And most of the things I did, I used to do or I am doing, changed with that realization. That even if I buy a drum to tell people anything, the Kenyan people are very intelligent. They tell you, just build a road, we'll see it. Leave us to see it. That's the message I got. And I think it answers most of the other things that, and